Hi. Hello, everybody. How you doing? I don't know how loud to make the music. Ready for Bible study? That's not quite what we're doing, but close enough, I suppose. Hi, Bird. Congrats on first. And hi, Flan. Welcome in. Hello, hello. I'm pretty sure we're here for Bible study. It's quiet time. It is, it is. I'm pretty sure we're not. But you can believe whatever little delusions make you feel better. Also, thank you for the subscription, Bird. I really, really appreciate it. Cheese and crackers, then. I mean, if you want to eat the cheese and crackers, go ahead. Did your Bible study have cheese and crackers? When I went to Bible camp, we barely got snacks. The only time I got cookies was when I stole them off the like before service snack table. Brought our own. Ah, smart. Though there was this very interesting thing where they like, I don't know entirely how they did it. I think they like draped a big cloth and like put down those white plastic cups to make it look like they were doing the whale eating the guy story, and the white plastic cups for the teeth, and they had like draped something to make it look like the head of the whale. It was actually pretty impressive. They put a lot of effort into it for like Bible camp. Sunday school, whatever. Pretty sure it's summer, so Bible camp. Share everybody. Ah. Today we're gonna be reading Wings of Fire, The Last Continent. I was gonna read the first book, but I read the first book so many times, I felt like I'd get bored. And the nice thing about like each of the sets is they're all like, you don't need to know anything from the previous set of five to know what's going on. So that's nice. Well, maybe the middle one you kind of need some context from the first one, but this one is like on a whole different island or continent with a whole new like lore and everything. So I figured it's fine. Also only read it once, unlike the first book in the whole series. So I thought I'd read third story arc. Yes, third story arc. I've only read it once. I remember loving it though. I really I love it more than I liked the first one. No spoilers. Is it really spoilers if I'm reading it with you? I mean, I don't think you've read. Have you read the second story arc? You don't really learn anything about the second story arc from the third one. It's entirely separate for like 99% of it. Like there are some bits from the second arc, but not enough to really affect anything. I didn't read the last three books. Don't care about spoilers? Oh, okay. I didn't I didn't read the last three books. Actually, no, I didn't read the last four books in the second arc. I've only fully read the first one. Oop, snort. Don't ignore that. And so I like there are a couple lore bits when I got to this one. Reed, who does that? Well, I'm here to do it for you, so at least there's that. So close to the funny number. You'll get it on the Kirby stream tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. I set an alarm, and I'm glad that I did. I set an alarm for the stream, and I'm so glad I did because I had completely forgot. And then I had to rush around setting up the backgrounds and stuff and giving everything proper filters and over here. And it's dark and quiet. I love it. This is technically book 11 in the series. Like the art showed off. So cute. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm really proud of it. Actually, part of the reason why I entirely forgot is because Emmy messaged me and was like, hey, how can I get one of these? So that was a bit distracting, I'll be honest. If the music is too loud or too quiet, let me know. I'm gonna hold the book up kind of like I'm holding it in the on my screen. So she commissioned you? Oh, did she? Nice. I'm really proud of that style. It was really fun, and I'm excited to draw with it more. And I'm hoping the more I draw with it, the better I get at it, and the more people want commissions of it, because it's fun to draw. I don't know if we should read. Yeah, we can read the prologue. All right. Oh, this is weird. Maybe I should put on something a little less beat heavy, maybe a bit more lo-fi. I mean, this is lo-fi, but that's not much better. Hmm. Hmm. Hi, Sarah. Welcome in. Hi, hi. Maybe Animal Crossing. They're the kind of vibe I'm going for. Crossing. Can't spell. Good enough. I could also put on something lullaby-ish, but that'd be a bit too sleepy, I think. It's hard to choose. Maybe... This is good. I'm satisfied with this. Yeah, this works. Alright. Here's the prologue. I'm gonna start off. About 2,000 years ago, If you are flying directly into a hurricane, it is probably useful to be a dragon who can see the future. Then again, if you are a dragon who can see the future, you're most likely far too smart to fly directly into a hurricane. And yet, according to Clearsight's visions, that was exactly what she needed to do. She shook out her black wings, which were already tired from how far she'd flown all morning and the day before. Her talons clung to the slippery wet rock below her. Her scales felt itchy with salt from the ocean spray. Above her, the sun peeked wearily through cracks in the dull gray clouds. She closed her eyes, tracing the future paths ahead of her. In one direction, south and a little east, there was a small island with a warm, sandy beach. 2 coconut palms nodded toward each other, and there were lazy tiger sharks to eat. The hurricane would pass by it completely. If she went there, Clearsight could rest, eat, and sleep in safety. Then she could continue on in 2 days after the storm was over. But in the other direction, a long flight west and slightly north, the lost continent was waiting for her. She knew it was real now. When she left Pyrrha to find it, she'd half expected to fly all around the world and end up back on Pyrrha's other coast. No one was sure another continent even existed, and if it did, everyone knew it was too far away to fly to. Any dragon would tire, fall into the sea, and drown before reaching it. But Clearsight wasn't any dragon. She had something no one else did: the ability to carefully trace the paths of multiple futures. Standing on the edge of Pyrrha, she could see which direction would take her to an island where she could rest, and then the next day to another island. Shifting her course slightly each day, guided by her visions, she had found a trail of small islands to take her safely across the ocean. A gust of wind roared over her, splattering a handful of raindrops onto her head. The hurricane was almost upon her. If she didn't leave right now, dragons on the lost continent would die. Dragons who might one day be her friends if she saved them. Dragons who had no idea what was bearing down on them, because there was no one there to warn them. Yet. Clearsight took a deep breath, vaulted into the sky, and pointed herself west. Her mind immediately started flashing through all the ways she could die in the next 2 days. This was why she hated flying in storms. They were too unpredictable. The smallest twitch of the wind in the wrong direction could send her plummeting to the rocks below, or drive a stray palm branch into her heart. Don't think about that. Think about the dragons who need you. The other vision was fading, the one where she flew southeast and hid. In that one, she had arrived on the lost continent in the hurricane's aftermath. The images of the devastation and dead bodies would be hard to shake off, even if she prevented them in reality. Will they believe me? Will they listen to me? In some of her visions, they did. In some, they didn't. All she could do was fly her hardest and hope. The hurricane fought her at every wing beat, as if it knew she was trying to snatch victims from its claws. Rain battered her ferociously. She felt like she'd be driven into the endless sea at any moment. Maybe she'd drown up here in the waterlogged sky. But this was only the outer edge of the storm. There was still far worse still to come. Clearsight was trying to reach land before the really terrible fury behind her did. She couldn't stop, couldn't slow down for a moment. At one point she glanced back and saw a spout of water sucked into the air. In the middle of it, an orca flailed desperately before the storm flung it away. A while later, after the sun had completely been swallowed for good, Clearsight saw an entire hut fly by her, then splinter apart. She had to duck quickly to avoid a lower air current to avoid the debris. Where had it come from? Who had lived in it? She would never know, her visions told her. And then, when Clearsight was beginning to lose all feeling in her wings, she saw a shape loom out of the clouds ahead. A cliff. Land. A lot of land. A whole continent, in fact. She canted her wings and soared toward the top of it, where she could see a never-ending line of trees tossing violently in the wind. The hurricane made one more effort to throw her back into the sea, but she fought with her last reserves until she felt earth beneath her talons. She collapsed forward, clutching the wet soil for a moment, grateful to be alive. Keep going. They're not safe yet. Clearsight pushed herself up and faced the trees. They were coming, the first 2 dragons she would meet in this strange new world. What would it be like to face unfamiliar tribes, completely different from the ones she knew? There wouldn't be any Nightwings like her here. No sand dragons, no sea dragons, no ice dragons. She'd glimpsed what these new dragons would look like, but she didn't know anything yet about their tribes, or whether they would trust her. They stepped out of the trees, eyeing her with wary curiosity. Oh, they're beautiful, she thought. One was dark forest green, the color of the trees all around him. His wings curved gracefully like long leaves on either side of him, and mahogany brown underscales glinted from his chest. But it was the other who took Clearsight's breath away. His scales were iridescent gold, layered over metallic rose and blue, shimmering through the rain. He outshone even the rain wings she'd occasionally seen in the marketplace, and those were the most beautiful dragons in Pyrrha. Not only that, but his wings were startlingly weird. There were 4 of them instead of 2. A second pair at the back overlapped the front ones, tilting and dipping at slightly different angles from the first pair to give the dragon extra agility in the air. Like dragonflies, she realized, remembering the delicate insects darting across the ponds in the mountain meadows, or butterflies, or beetles. She sat up and spread her front talons to show that she was harmless. "Hello," she said in her very least threatening voice. The green one circled her slowly. The iridescent one sat down and gave her a small smile. She smiled back, although her heart was pounding. She knew she had to wait for them to make the first move. "Leave from it you?" said the green dragon finally, in a deep, calm voice. Wayrut? It's really hard to say that. Wayrut? Take a breath. You knew it would be like this at first. "My name is Clearsight," she said, touching her forehead. "I am from far over the sea." She pointed at the churning ocean stretching way off to the east. Behind her. "Anyone speak dragon?" The 2 strangers exchanged surprised glances. "The old language," said the shimmering dragon, awkwardly and slowly, as if pulling the words from his memory bit by bit. "You do know it," Clearsight said, hope darting through her veins. "Some little," he said. "Much old." He smiled again. The green dragon said something in their own language and nodded at the ocean. The other answered, and they spoke for a few moments. If they had been a pair of Nightwings, Clearsight would have guessed they were arguing, but their tone was so peaceful that she couldn't really tell. The old language. I wonder if their continent and ours had more contact in the past. Maybe we will again in the future. I could teach them all dragon, especially if some of them already know it. That way, if any more Pyrrhans ever come this way, they could communicate. It was hard to imagine other dragons making the journey she'd just made, though. It was so far, and dependent on finding those small islands in such a vast sea. But maybe she could help with that. Not soon, though, not while I feel any temptation to wake Darkstalker. I can't go back to Pyrrha until I've forgotten him. So probably never. "Why are you here down?" Gold-Pink Dragon asked her. "There's a really bad storm coming," she said, as clearly as she could. He spread his wings and looked up, smiling into the raindrops. "See that?" he said, with a shrug. "No." She shook her head. "I see." She pointed to her head. "I see the future. Tomorrow and the next day. I see all the days. This storm kills many dragons." She waved her talons at the dripping forest around him. "Rips up many trees." Both dragons were frowning now. "Tree harm?" growled the green dragon. "Twigheart lots splinterfall? But you can save them," Clearsight pressed on. The visions were crowding into her head. She was running out of time. She couldn't be diplomatic and patient anymore. We have to move everyone, all dragons, far, far inland, as far as they can fly, right now, and wait there until the storm is over. She turned to the metallic dragon, her talons clasped together. Please save them. The moment teetered, two paths waveringly possible. Finally, the shimmering dragon nodded. Move all, we will do. He said something in their language to the green dragon, who nodded as well. The relief hit Clearsight so hard she nearly had to lie down again. But the dragons beckoned her to follow them, and they all took off, flying cautiously through the storm-tossed treetops. That's a tongue twister. Storm-tossed treetops? Wow. Dragons appeared between the leaves as she swept through the forest with her two companions, all of them watching her with startled curiosity. Most of them were dark green and brown, with leaf-shaped wings. That's their name in dragon, she realized from a new cascade of visions. Leaf wings. But about a quarter of them were the other tribe, the one Clearsight didn't have a name for yet, and those glittered like jewels on the branches, gold and blue and purple and orange and every color of the rainbow. She saw a tiny lavender dragonette clinging to a branch, and for a moment Clearsight was alarmed to see she didn't have any wings. Then she spotted little wing buds on the dragonette's back and remembered foreseeing that the glittering tribe grew their wings a few years after hatching. Growing up wingless. That must be so strange. Clearsight's mind flashed to that other vision, the horrible one, where this dragonette had been one of the many bodies left in the hurricane wreckage. Thank you for the hydrate. Congrats on third, gamer. Welcome in. How you doing? Oh, I pressed my space key and I paused the music. Let me push my keyboard out of the way. It's in the way. Yeah. Gross. Gross water. Necessary, but gross. I breathed in some water. I'm fine. But instead, tomorrow, the little dragon would wake up and chase butterflies in the sunlight, complaining that she wanted blackberries for breakfast. I saved her. I did something right. The green dragon called out in a booming voice like a bell tolling. Whatever he said, the dragons around them repeated it, passing it along. Clearsight could hear the echoes of other dragon voices rolling through the forest. She felt the drumming wing beats behind her as both tribes rose into the air and followed them to safety. You save us, said the shimmering dragon, looping around to fly beside Clearsight. He smiled at her again. You're safe now, too. Maybe I am, she thought. I stopped Darkstalker. I saved Fathom and the Nightwings and my parents, and now I found a new home with new dragons to save. I can help them with my visions. I can do everything right this time. New futures exploded in her mind. She might marry this kind, funny dragon, whose name would turn out to be Sunstreak, or she could end up with a dragon she'd meet in 3 days, while helping to clean up the forest, whose gentle green eyes were nothing like Darkstalker's. She could move in with an affable, very old leafwing named Maple who spoke the old language, or she could find her own tree hollow to live in, or she could explore the new continent first, then come back here to build a new home. And there would be dragonettes, if she wanted them. Clearsight felt a sudden, dizzying rush of love for dragons who weren't even eggs yet. Little Jewel and whip-smart Tortoiseshell and Cuddly Orange. Who names their dragonette Orange? Sunstreak, apparently. They might have to have some conversations about that plan. And Commodore, the king of giggles. She would always miss the dragonettes she could have had with Darkstalker, but she would love the ones that were coming with all her heart, and nothing bad would ever happen to them. They would all live the longest, happiest lives because she would be here, tracking their paths, keeping them safe. Had to turn my heating pad back on. She would get it right this time. Book indeed, book. Your root place, Sunstreak said, gently interrupting her thoughts. Where? She pointed back out to sea. Hira. She waved her claws at the continent around them. This? Where? She asked. He smiled again. Pantala, he said slowly and clearly, and with evident pride. Pantala, she echoed back. The lost continent is real, and it has a name, and it's my home now. Pantala, here I am. And here's part 1, which is 2,000 years later. I'm gonna, like, prop my book up. My hands are hurting. It's weird. Blue was a dragon who liked things the way they were. That is, if he didn't act exactly like everything about life as a Silkwing, he had to admit that at least he was safe, and, things were fine, really. It wasn't perfect, but at least his tribe and the Hivewings coexisted peacefully. The Hivewings protected them from outside threats, and everyone followed the rules, and the hives were beautiful and spotless, and there were always enough yams and okra to eat, so it wasn't that the kind of world everyone wanted to live in? Blue wasn't sure how everyone else felt, but he wondered about it all the time. He often tried to imagine himself as other dragons. Were they all as content as he was, or was he luckier than most? Did they want the same things he did? What did they worry about? What did they hope for? If they seemed unhappy, why was that? His guesses were probably mostly wrong, he was sure, but Blue couldn't stop thinking about it. It felt like a constant tugging on his imagination. What was the fidgety dragonette next to him in math class thinking when she drew hexagons in the margins of her test? What did their rose-pink neighbor worry about while he cleaned the dead bugs from his webs? What about the Hivewings? How were their lives and hopes and lunches and morning aches and nightmares different from his? The other lives drew him like a flame or the scent of nectarines. He spent the night before his sister's metamorphosis as her, winding himself deep into the dream of being Luna. Perhaps her wing buds had started to flutter open as she fell asleep. Perhaps she lay awake for a while, gazing up at the shrouded stars, thinking of the moment she could leap from the top of the hive and race the skylarks to the sea. He thought she might also be looking forward to the moonsilk dark she would spin herself, and the days of emerald-tinted sleep inside the cocoon. No one could yell at her or assign her extra work while she was in there, growing her wings. He knew Luna wasn't scared, like he would be in 6 days when his own metamorphosis time came. Luna had always felt ready for life with wings. Blue was not, and most of all, he was not ready for life with her wings, which meant everything changing. Once she had wings, Luna would be assigned to a work order. Soon she'd be paired up with whichever partner the queen chose for her, and given another cell to live in. She might even be moved to another hive. It was normal. It was the way life always was for Silkwings. Everyone had a metamorphosis. Everyone had a new life chosen for them. Everyone moved on. But now that it was happening to his family, Blue found it extremely nerve-wracking. He was already awake when Luna bounded across the web and started shaking him shortly after dawn. He wasn't sure he'd slept at all. For a while he'd been watching the glow of tiny lights moving far below them in Cicada Hive, imagining himself as one of those early rising dragons on their way to work, awake before the sun. In the distance, he could see Hornet Hive in one direction and Mantis Hive in the other, although the webs that connected them were mostly invisible in the dark. He'd never been to any of the other hives, but he knew they were spread out in a wide circle around the plains of Pantala. The enormous dragon cities rose from the grassland and reached for the sky like towering dragon-made echoes of the trees that used to dominate the land. Their roofs stretched out like branches, and the dense silvery threads of silkwing webs created a canopy tying those branches together, so wingless silkwing dragonettes could travel between hives far above the ground if they wanted to. And they were allowed to. He yawned and batted Luna's talons away, pretending he'd been in a deep sleep. Dewdrops glittered all across the web, around and above them, as if it had rained tiny diamonds in the night. He could see the silk-bundled shape of Luna's mother on the outer edge of their cell, still fast asleep. His own mother was on a night crew these days, and had been gone since midnight. "It's today! It's today!" Luna whispered. Her pale green tail flipped back and forth, sending tremors through the silken threads. She bounded closer to Blue to poke his shoulder again and sent his hammock rocking perilously. "Hey, watch it!" he teased, nudging her away. "Some of us don't have wings for another 6 days." There were layers and layers of other strong webs crisscrossing below his family's web, ready to catch any falling dragonettes, but even so, it was hard to forget how far down the ground was. He always felt safer in the hives than he did out on the webs, which he worried was not a very normal silkwing attitude. "And some of us," she sang, "will have them today." She sat up and flexed the tiny wing buds on her shoulder blades. "Well, not exactly," he pointed out. "Today is only your cocoon spinning day. It'll take another 5 days for your wings to actually... He yelped as she upended his hammock and dumped him onto the web. "Don't you actually me? I'm your older sister, and I've been to like 12 metamorphosis days. Plus, I have the highest grade in our class in silk studies. I can actually you under the table." "Yes, all right," Blue said, stretching his legs one by one. "You're the smartest dragon in the family. I know, I admit it." He snuck a glance over his shoulder at his own wing buds. They looked the same as yesterday, small, tightly curled, and iridescent violet, a brighter, more purple shade than the gem-like azure of the rest of his scales. Luna's wing buds were beginning to unfurl, so he could see whirls of cobalt and gold inside the pale green exterior. There were also signs of her silk coming in. Already her palms and wrists were glowing a little, as though tiny fireflies were waking up under her scales. "That'll be me soon," he thought, tamping down a wave of panic. "After my own metamorphosis, I'll have wings and silk too." Maybe the changes would be small. Maybe he'd be assigned to live right here to help his mother strengthen the bridges between hives. Maybe Luna would stay too and be a hive drone like her mother, working for one of the upper-class hive-wing families. She wouldn't like that, though. Luna wanted to be a spinner. She was hoping to be paired with Swordtail in an artist's cell near the sunny heights of the web. She wanted to make a weaving so beautiful it would have to be given to the queen of the Hivewings, who ruled both tribes, or at least to one of the queen's sisters. Blue had seen the queen only once, when she visited Cicada Hive. Queen Wasp had come through to inspect their school with 20 Hivewing soldiers marching in impressive, exact unison behind her. Her scales glittered in perfect black and yellow stripes, and her eyes were large and completely black, surrounded by an oval of yellow scales. Imagining himself into her was almost impossible. It was like trying to imagine life as the sun, but he couldn't help trying. He thought about how she must wake up in the morning and eat breakfast like anyone else, though if the rumors were true, she ate as rarely as possible and only predators. The head of a lioness for lunch one day, slices of black mamba and squid ink soup for dinner 12 days later. She wondered if her wings felt strong or heavy as she flew from hive to hive to check on her subjects. Was she relieved to have sisters to share her responsibilities with? Or did she worry that they might covet her throne? How often did she check the Book of Clearsight? If he were queen, with 2 tribes full of thousands of dragons depending on him, Blue guessed he'd read it every day until he had it memorized. At one point during her visit, she had spotted Blue and Luna and stared at them for approximately a century and a half by his internal clock. He'd gotten a distinct feeling that she was trying to decide between adopting them or eating them. Queen Wasp was as breathtaking and superior as all stories said. After that, her sister, Lady Cicada, the ruler of their hive, had never seemed quite so terrifying to him again. And maybe that was the point of the queen's visits, to remind everyone whose claws held the real power. "So," Luna said, taking one of his talons in hers, "my last day as a dragonette. What are we going to do?" "Lie around on the web in the sunlight?" he suggested, hopefully. "No, you lazy banana slug," she said. "All my favorite things. That's the correct answer." This isn't fair. By the time it's my metamorphosis day, nobody will be left to do my favorite things with me. You'll all be too busy flying around with your big flappy wings doing fancy, busy, wingish things. Luna managed not to make a face, but Blue instantly felt guilty anyway. He knew she wished Swordtail could spend the day with them too, but Swordtail was on construction duty on the west side of Cicada Hive all day, and probably getting dusty and frustrated and missing Luna like crazy. Sorry, Blue said. Don't be, Luna said. Once I have my wings, Swordtail and I can be partnered, and then I'll see quite enough of him. She grinned, as though applying for the partnership actually meant they'd get it, which Blue thought was far from certain. He didn't know any adult Silkwings who'd been given the partner of their choice. His mother and Luna's mother hadn't even known their father, who had been whisked away to another hive once there were eggs. Blue knew his name, Admiral, and nothing else. Better this way, though, he thought. Burnet and Silverspot ended up loving each other much more than they could have ever loved Admiral. They were a good family, the four of them, and it worked out for the best. Queen Wasp and her sisters knew what they were doing with the partner assignments. If Luna and Swordtail weren't matched up, it would be for a good reason. Lesbian dragons! Fuck yeah! So where do we start? He asked. No, wait, let me guess. Honeydrops. Honey drops, Luna sang, bouncing the web again and fluttering her wing buds. Move your tail and maybe we'll beat the line at the checkpoint. He dipped his snout into their dew collector, washing his antennae and the dry scales under his eyes, as Luna darted across their web to her mother. Silverspot sat up and wrapped her wings around Luna, quickly enough that Blue wondered whether she had been awake all night, too. Have a wonderful day, my darling. I'll try to make it to the cocoon, Silverspot promised, but... I know, Luna said. It's all right. Silverspot's mistress was bad-tempered and frantically insecure about her place in the hive hierarchy, and she tended to take out her rage on Silverspot with thousands of small cruelties. Keeping Silverspot from her only daughter's metamorphosis would probably be the highlight of her year. Just think, next time I see you, I'll have wings. We can go flying together. I can't wait, Silverspot agreed. But when she hugged Luna again, Blue caught a strange expression crossing her face. Anxiety? Fear? He felt a weird chill run through his scales. Silverspot looked as though she knew something they didn't. As if, for some reason, Silverspot suspected she would never see her daughter again. The creeping sense of foreboding followed Blue as he clambered along the webs after Luna. The sun was rising, sending shafts of filmy gray light through the silken strands around them. The soft hum of insect wings rose from the tall, waving grasses of the savanna below. Luna was a reckless climber, leaping from one level to the next like a monkey, or like a dragon who already had her wings. Blue was more sensible, relying on the slight stickiness of the silk to keep him anchored as he ascended. Even so, today he felt more airsick than he normally did. Each tremor along the silk seemed to vibrate right into his bones, making his antennae twitch nervously and his teeth ache. He was relieved when they reached the hive entrance, where the webs connected to the uppermost tier of the city. There was already a line 20 dragons long, but at least here they could wait on the solid ground of the entrance tunnel. He stepped off the web onto the papery dry surface and flexed his talons. The walls of the tunnel were painted with a mural of silkwings and hivewings flying together in a bright blue sky, all of them looking as happy as Luna on a honey drop spree. Much of the mural was covered up, though, by the posters that lined the walls. Be vigilant. We are always in danger. Beware of leafwings. Report disloyal silkwings to a hivewing authority immediately. Queen Wasp sees everything. Queen Wasp protects us all. All hail Queen Wasp. Leafwings, gone or lying in wait. Report any sightings of possible leafwings to a hivewing authority immediately. That last one had a drawing of a snarling dark green dragon on it, complete with blood-stained claws and teeth. Seemed as if a new poster appeared on the walls every other day, and half of them were about the threat of leafwings. Luna caught him studying the picture and snorted. What? He said. Come on, she said. You're not really afraid of leafwings, are you? Why not? He asked. They nearly wiped us out half a century ago, or has my genius sister forgotten all our history lessons already? Okay. But they failed, she pointed out, and now they're extinct, so there's nothing to worry about. It's not like they can attack us if they're all dead. We don't know that they are, he argued. Tusuk said his uncle saw one flying overhead a couple years ago. What about that section of Mantis Hive that collapsed last year? Everyone said that was Leafwing sabotage. Water time. Eh. Una said scornfully. What Tussock's uncle saw was a green silkwing. He's just hysterical. And that collapse was caused by shoddy workmanship. The sabotage story was so obviously a cover-up. Shh, Blue said, glancing at the Hivewing soldiers up ahead. They looked busy checking IDs, but they might still overhear Luna's treacherous talk. Look, Luna said, lowering her voice and rolling her eyes. No one has really seen a Leafwing in over 50 years, and we cut down all their trees, so where would they even be living if they were still alive? Slithering through the tall grass of the savannah? No, they're gone, thanks to Queen Wasp, so all this was totally unnecessary. She waved her hands at the warning poster, waved her claws at the warning posters. The hives don't cover the whole continent, he suggested, but she was already talking over him. The queen just needs us to have what's it called? A common enemy, you know? So the Silkwings don't start complaining or asking for their own queen or anything like that. Our own queen? Blue was startled. He never even thought about the Silkwings asking for a separate queen before. It was kind of alarming that Luna had. That seemed like the kind of dangerous idea Swordtail might have put in her head. Not that I think we should, Luna said hurriedly, and this time she was the one to glance over at the soldiers. But someone might if they were unhappy with the way things are. Blue shook his head. I don't think so. I don't know any unhappy Silkwings. A poster behind Luna said loyalty above all, with a giant dragon of Queen Wasp's huge dark eyes. Sometimes they were a comforting sight, but in the middle of this conversation they were making him uneasy. Everything is great in the hives. We're safe and we all work together, so I don't see what anyone have to complain about. The line moved them within earshot of the soldiers, and they stopped talking instinctively. They give the head pats. Blue gazed at the long, pale blue wings of the dragon in front of him, imagining where she might be going, until finally it was their turn. Names, one of the soldiers said in a blue, bored voice. Every Hivewing had at least a few black scales, inherited from their common ancestor Clearsight. But this dragon was almost entirely black, with only a few orange specks here or there. Blue and Luna had seen him here at the checkpoint nearly every day for 3 years, and yet the soldier never gave any indication of recognizing them or caring that they existed beyond their IDs. His name was Hawker, not that he'd ever told them that. Blue had picked it up from listening to the guards grumbling at one another. Blue, he said, holding out his right arm. The soldier studied the letters that had been carved into Blue's palm when he was a newly hatched dragonette. B for his name, forming a triangle with a smaller B and an A for his parents' names. Luna always said she was glad the marketing happened while they were too young to remember. Blue was pretty sure he did have memories of that day. A bright light, a searing pain, and most clearly, a sense of betrayal. I forgot about that. I forgot that they... Yikes. Hawker grunted and moved on to examining the wrist cuff on Blue's other arm. It was a dull bronze color and annoyingly heavy, though Blue was mostly used to it by now. It indicated he was a student at one of the schools to the hive, so he was permitted to go in and out through this checkpoint. The name of the school was inscribed in the metal, Silkworm Hall. And I'm Luna, said his sister. Ah, said the soldier, turning to consult a list on a small rectangle of paper. Metamorphosis today. That's right, Luna said. Blue could tell she was trying so hard not to smile. Smiling at soldiers was always risky. You never knew if you'd get a rare smile back or if you'd end up spending an afternoon on Miss Behavior's way for taunting a figure of authority. Blue imagined that the soldiers had to be that alert and suspicious. If dragons didn't respect them, how could they keep the peace and control the hive? But he also believed that Swordtail hadn't deserved it any of the 3 times he'd wound up on Misbehavior's way. Swordtail had wild ideas and talked a little too freely, but he wasn't a danger to the hive. You'll have a new one of these next time you come through here, Hawker said, tapping Luna's wrist cuff, which matched Blue's. I know, she said, as Blue's heart sank. One more change. Luna was done with school now. He'd have to go without her. Not for very long, though. I'll be needing a new wristband soon, too. How would it feel to have this one cut off in exchange for something else? Surely it would be a bit like having one of his toes casually replaced. Well, said the soldier. He looked at his list and then back at Luna again. You may go. Hawker cleared his throat gruffly as they started forward. Good luck. Oh, thank you, Luna said, startled. She dragged Blue forward, managing to hold on until they were far down the tunnel before she burst into giggles. He said so many words to us all of a sudden, she cried. I didn't know he knew so many words. Maybe he likes you. Blue suggested with a grin. It was a joke, but then what if he did? Blue felt himself slipping into visions of the Hivewing's possible life. Did Hawker go home and dream of the Silkwing he saw every day but could never be with? Did his friends tease him about his dedications to his work? Did he like being a soldier, following orders all day long, or did he ever wish the rules were different? Ooh, maybe we'll have a forbidden love, Luna gasped, falling into Blue and knocking him back into reality. Well, I am not going to be the one to tell Swordtail. Luna laughed and started telling a story about something funny Swordtail had said the night before. Blue patted beside her, glad to be off the topic of Silkwing-Hivewing relationships. Forbidden was putting it mildly. Whatever the strongest word for illegal was, that was the right word. Prohibited? Outlawed? Punishable by death? All of those times a million. They reached the end of the tunnel, where it widened and forked into several other tunnels. The path to the right led to the Mosaic Garden, but they'd go there later, Blue was sure. It was Luna's favorite place in the hive. First, though, they made their way down 3 levels through 2 more checkpoints. It was warm, as always in the hive, with sunlight filtering through the walls to cast an amber glow over everything. All of the hives were made of tree stuff, which was a particular mix of wood pulp and silk and clay and other things Blue would learn about if he was assigned to a construction crew. It looked paper-thin and allowed light to filter through, but was solid as rock. Under his talons, the tree stuff floor was dry and mostly smooth, apart from a few lumps where workers hadn't been careful enough. The problem was, the hives had been built back when there were plenty of trees all over Pantala. Now that the trees were all gone, or mostly gone, the only wood pulp came from the shrubby little bushes that fought their way out of the dry soil of the savannah. So the only way to expand was to take the tree stuff from somewhere else in the hive and reshape it where you wanted it. It was hard, back-breaking work, usually given to the Silkwings who caused the most trouble in school, such as, for instance, Swordtail. Blue was really, really hoping he didn't get assigned to a construction crew. A silkwork detail would be different. What his mom did in the sky between the hives was half architecture, half art. He wouldn't mind a job like that. Blue had been a good, quiet, obedient student at Silkworm Hall his whole life. Surely he'd earned a better assignment than tree stuff collection. Finally, Luna took a path to the right instead of the left, and they came to the open market of Cicada Hive. This was a huge vaulted space that hummed with activity. The best shops had permanent 6-sided cells around the outer wall. Everyone else had to scramble for stalls in the labyrinthian middle. Overhead, yellow and orange lanterns hung along silk filaments, crisscrossing the ceiling like necklaces of tiny suns. And as always, soldiers perched on balconies above the market, keeping a sharp eye on the hustle and bustle of the dragons below. Some of them held long, needle-like lances that looked like bigger versions of the stingers that could spring from the tips of Queen Wasp's claws. Not that Blue had ever seen her use them, but they were featured in several of her posters. Some of those were in here, in fact. Her face loomed over the market in murals and posters until he almost felt as though he had 100 lenses in his eyes, each of them reflecting her back at him. Luna led the way confidently through the maze until Blue realized she was aiming for the best nectar store in the hive. A tall, imposing cell front with delicate sugar confections arrayed in the window. He jumped forward and stepped on her tail, yanking her back. Ow! She yelped. What was that for? Three haughty-looking highwings nearly ran into them, and he tugged Luna out of their way, mumbling apologies. They wrinkled their noses and spread their wings, making a few other silkwings duck to the side of the path to give them space. And then they swept away. Luna, silkwings don't go into the sugar dream, he said. Let's go to droplets like we always do. It's my metamorphosis day, she objected. We've only never been there because we usually can't afford it, but today is different. Mother gave me enough scales for it. She said to have the best last day ever. Blue shivered involuntarily. The phrase last day really wasn't helping his anxiety about Silverspot's face this morning. Stop worrying. Luna said, nudging his shoulder. They'll take our scales no matter who we are, and these might be the best honey drops we ever get. She bounded off again, and he followed, unconvinced but aware that arguing with his sister would get him exactly nowhere. There was only one other customer in the Sugar Dream when they entered, an older lemon-yellow hive-wing with black stripes on her wings and ruby scales freckling her nose and tail. She peered over a pair of spectacles at them, then went back to squinting at the shelves of pale pink and lavender candies. The hive-wing behind the counter stiffened and flicked his long red tail disapprovingly, his brows arching as high as they could possibly go. Hello, Luna said cheerfully, ignoring his expression. We'd like 2 honey drops, please. She dropped the soft gray silk pouch around her neck. She touched the soft gray silk pouch around her neck as she spoke, so that the scales inside jingled. Who's your mistress? Is she new to this hive? She should know that shopping for luxury items is not a task traditionally entrusted with servants. We're nobody's servants, Luna said indignantly. We want them for ourselves. Nobody's servants yet, Blue added quickly. We're still in school. He pointed to their wing buds. It's her metamorphosis day today, actually, so we'll know her soon, and then I'm sure the dragons we will work for will, He made himself stop talking. Judging by the frown on the shopkeeper's face, it was clearly not helping. Indeed, said the sales dragon. Well, as you can see, I'm currently assisting another customer. I'm afraid you'll have to wait. He narrowed his eyes and tipped his chin at the spectacles dragon. Blue and Luna glanced over at her. The elderly dragon had her snout down close to a box of honey sticks. As they watched, she nudged a bag of sugar cubes closer to her and tapped it with a claw, mumbling as though she was counting each cube. Luna shot the clerk an "Are you kidding me?" look. He pretended not to see it. We can wait, we whispered to her. Causing trouble would only get them kicked out with no honey drops. Several long moments passed. Blue studied the beautiful sugar-spun artwork behind the clerk, an elegant pale green praying mantis, a glittering blue and white dragonfly, an array of different jewel-colored beetles, and several miniature wasps. He wondered if it felt disrespectful to any of the highwings to eat something their queen was named after. Was this clerk the one who had made the delicate sugar insects? Did he spend his early mornings in the back room of the shop, carefully pouring honey into frozen teardrops and lacing chocolate stars with speckles of orange peel? Did he love coming here every day, or was he so sick of sweetness that all he could stomach anymore was the saltiest gazelle jerky? Blue guessed that the shopkeeper had hoped his rudeness would drive them away, and now he was regretting his choice, because it meant 2 silkwings were lingering in his precious store, right where anyone might wonder why and see them. He probably wished he had taken their money and got rid of them quickly, but now he was stuck waiting for his other customer to make up her mind, just as they were. The door swung open, letting in a burst of noise from outside as 2 highwing entered. Their giddy chatter dropped away abruptly when they saw Blue and Luna standing by the counter. Oh, one of them said. Schaefer, what interesting new customers you have. The other one giggled and edged past Blue, keeping her wings canted away from him. Don't worry, Weevil, sir. I'm sure they'll be leaving soon, Schaefer said, somehow managing to be oily and tense at the same time. Yes, we will, Luna piped up, as soon as we get our honey drops. Schaefer twitched his snout at her as if she were an actual moth he'd found nibbling on one of his rugs. By the hive, what a bore it must be to be wingless, Weevil said, pacing around the two silkwing dragon nets. I bet you feel like half a dragon, hardly a dragon at all. Such cute little wing buds, though. Can I touch one? He reached forward out towards Luna's back. No! Luna cried, jerking away from him. Blue wasn't sure which dragon was the most horrified. Himself, Schaefer, or the rude Hivewing? You can touch mine, he said quickly. It's her metamorphosis day, so she's there. It's better not to touch them right before the change. That wasn't true at all. Luna was just being difficult and impertinent to dragons who could really get them in a lot of trouble if they wanted to. Those soldiers outside could be summoned at a moment's notice by any Hivewing. Oh, said Weevil. Right, of course. As though he obviously knew everything about metamorphosis. How exciting for you, little Silkwing. He reached out his talons and poked Blue's wing buds roughly, as though Weevil was trying to unfurl them by force. Blue tried not to wince. He tried to make it better by imagining Weevil's life, a family who loved him perhaps, who hugged him goodbye in the morning. Maybe he desperately wanted to be a soldier but hadn't qualified for the academies. Maybe he'd been reassigned to a management or gathering job instead, which made him bitter and furious with everyone he could safely push around. It was difficult, though, to slide into sympathy with this particular dragon. Possibly he was just a jerk and had always been that way. The old Hivewing with the spectacles suddenly appeared at Weevil's side. There's no need to be a brute, Weevil, she said to him. Could you help me with these nectar vials over here? I'm afraid my old claws will drop one. Of course, Lady Scarab, Weevil said deferentially. Deferentially. He let go of Blue and followed her to the other side of the shop. Lady Scarab, Blue thought. If she had a title, she must be related to the queen. A sister or an aunt, perhaps, but not one with her own hive. Still, she would be way up the hierarchy of the Hivewings, which explained Weevil's behavior towards her. Someone said honey drops, and now I must have them, said Weevil's friend, who had been blissfully pretending not to see Luna or Blue. We'll take 8 of those, 6 of the little sugar wasps, and a box of apricot taffy. Make it pretty. Of course, said the sales dragon. He took a pale pink box out of the counter and started packing her order into it. Don't say anything, Blue whispered to Luna, who was giving Schaefer her best murderous glare. You got this? It differentially is very hard to say. It's just the way it is. To her credit, and Blue's surprise, Luna bit her tongue until the 2 Hivewings were gone. Sailing out of the shop with their candy and a few loud whispers about poor wingless street urchins cluttering up the place. So, Luna said to Schaefer with strained politeness, may we please have our honey drops now? After I serve the Lady Scarab, he said sniffily. But those, you just... Luna protested. I beg your pardon. Blue turned and saw Lady Scarab eyeing Schaefer like a bone she'd already chewed on. She had moved on from counting sugar cubes to checking nectar vials under one of the lamps, but her talons were suddenly still, and her tail was coiled up like a snake. Am I to understand you are delaying these little no-wings on my account? It's no trouble, Lady Scarab. They can wait. You are my first priority. Well, I don't want to be, she snapped. Serve them right now. Blue poked Luna with his tail to try to get the smug look off her face. My lady, I quite insist. We do not serve second-class dragons before royalty in this establishment. Even if I insist? She said coldly. They stared at each other for a long moment, and Blue suddenly got the feeling that there was something more complicated about Lady Scarab's place in the hive than he'd realized. Something that made this sales clerk willing to test the edges of her dominance. And then the air shifted. Blue's nose twitched and twitched again. It was some kind of smell. It started small, a faint hint of rottenness, but slowly grew stronger and sharper and more horrible. Luna covered her snout with a gagging sound. My lady, Schaefer cried, stumbling back as though the odor had punched him in the face. Please don't. I'll have to close my shop for the rest of the day. This isn't necessary. I said, she hissed, serve them right now. He scrambled frantically behind the counter, grabbed a small white box, and dumped 2 honey drops into it. Here, he gasped at Luna. Take it. How much? She asked through her talons. Just get out of here, he begged. Blue took the box, but Luna stopped to pull a pair of scales out of her pouch. She dropped them on the counter and darted toward the door. Thank you, I think. It's not very dignified. I think it's like some sort of scent pheromone thing. Like, you know how like when ants get all freaked out, they release a ton of formic acid and that makes them stinky? Probably closer to ants. Thank you, I think, Blue said to Lady Scarab, trying not to breathe through his nose. She looked serene and supremely unbothered by the smell. Choose an establishment friendlier to Silkwings next time, she suggested. He nodded and escaped out into the market behind Luna. Was that her? Luna asked as they hurried between the stalls. Did she make that awful smell? I've heard some hive wings have that power, but I didn't think anyone would actually use it. I mean, why would they? To terrorize their enemies, Luna answered. Moons, I sure would. If I had super stink powers, I'd have blasted that Weevil guy right in the snout the moment he got anywhere near our wing buds. Ooh, that would have been awesome. For about 2 heartbeats, Blue pointed out, and then it would have been opposite of awesome, because you would be in jail forever. Blue, don't you think it's unfair that Hivewings can use their weapons on us anytime they want, but we can't do anything to fight back? No! He looked around quickly, but none of the nearby dragons reacted as if they'd just heard treason. It was loud enough in the market, and they were moving so quickly between stalls that he could hope no one would overhear them. The Hivewings saved us, remember? Our tribe agreed to accept their queen. Besides, there's a reason why the universe gave them weapons, and not us. That's why they're in charge. Maybe if we fought back, they wouldn't be in charge, she pointed out. Luna! He herded her into the tunnels that led to the other levels of the hive. His voice dropped to a whisper. For the love of Silk, what's gotten into you today? I know Swordtail is full of crazy ideas. Please don't let him drag you into prison along with him. Those are my ideas, she said crossly. He got them from me. Well, then leave me out of it. He covered his ears. La la la, everyone's a good hive citizen here. His sister rolled her eyes. Oh, Blue. She hesitated, studying his face, and then shook her head as though she hadn't found the answer she wanted there. All right. I'm sorry. She flexed her claws and looked down at her wrists. It's probably just because of my silk coming in. It hurts a lot more than I expected it to. Her palms and wrists were glowing even brighter than before. Blue hadn't noticed it in the well-lit market, but here in the dim tunnels, it was impossible to ignore. She seemed to have little balls of fire clustered under her scales, bubbles of molten orange and gold. That doesn't look normal, he said anxiously. I've never seen anyone's silk glands do that before metamorphosis. Have you? Swordtail and his sister Io had gotten their wings not too long ago. He remembered their palms glowing a little bit, but not like this, and they hadn't mentioned anything about it hurting. Does metamorphosis hurt? Why wouldn't anyone warn us about that? I'm sure it's nothing, Luna said with a shrug. Everyone metamorphoses a little differently. Should we take you to a doctor? No way, she said. She swiped the box of honey drops out of his talons. I'm not spending my perfect last day getting prodded by some hivewing who thinks we're all weird and revolting. I'm totally fine. To the Mosaic Garden. Let's go. Luna darted away up the tunnel. Blue rubbed his own wrist worriedly and then followed her. He could see the glow from her scales reflecting off the tunnel walls. Is she going to be all right? If everything has to change, could it at least be ordinary, predictable change? Spirit of Clearsight, if you're listening, please take care of my sister. Please let her metamorphosis be normal. And if you have time, would you please also make sure she's not arrested for treason? That'd be great. Thanks. Basically like a teen getting pimples. Like metamorphosis? Probably not. They're like silk, well, Well, they're kind of like silkworms, except for they metamorphosize into getting their silk instead of metamorphosizing out of their silk. Like, losing their silk when they metamorphosize. I think. I think they only have the, like, glowing wrists, like, the last day. The mosaic garden glimmered in droplets of amber and gold, cobalt and jade, obsidian and pearl. Fragments of dragons prowled along the walkways in a claw and coiled around the columns. In the pavilions, claws and teeth roared across the ceilings. Ancient battles captured in bits of glass forever. Glowing spot. Yeah, I don't know, maybe. I don't think it's a pimple because that's like gross. That's like an infection. This is natural. Here at the top of the garden, the sky was allowed to run free. It was the only place where Hivewings could look up and see no roof unless they wanted to climb to the top layers of the webs, which Hivewings never did, or venture into the dry savanna below. Across the garden, sunlight drenched the grassy slopes and hedgerows, soaking into the obedient faces of the flowers that marched rose, carnations, gold, violet, in orderly lines beside the path. The scents were heavy and warm, like the drowsy, buzzing insects that browsed the floral options. The path itself seemed winding and random, branching and wandering back, but it eventually spiraled everyone into the central feature, the Salvation Wall. This morning the garden was busy with dragons, but Blue and Luna found a spot on the grassy slope where they could sprawl with a view of the Salvation Mosaic. I'm not sure why you like this scene so much, Blue said as Luna passed him his honey drop. It has a few too many dead silkwings in it for me. His wing buds twitched and he glanced around, double-checking that there was no Hivewings in earshot. He didn't think it was treason to criticize the Salvation Mosaic, but it certainly might be. But even more dead leafwings, Luna pointed out. Isn't that reassuring? Blue didn't argue with her, but he'd always found the mosaic sad instead of triumphant. He knew it showed the end of the war, so it made sense that there were dead dragons in it. It should make him glad that these were supposed to be the last dragons ever killed in the war with the Leafwings. He also knew they should all be grateful to the Hivewings for saving the Silkwings from the vicious green tribe. But it just made him wonder why there had to be a war at all. Why didn't the Leafwings give up and go away, or agree to be ruled by Queen Wasp? Why did they fight so hard instead? They must have known they couldn't win. There were so many more Hivewings, and of course there was the book, which was guaranteed to guide the Hivewings to victory. So why did the Hivewings bother fighting, knowing so many dragons would die for no good reason? It was their own fault their tribe was wiped out if Luna was right and they were really gone. Queen Sequoia should have given up her throne and accepted Queen Wasp's protection like Queen Monarch did. Then the Leafwings could have lived alongside the Silkwings, all three tribes under one queen working together. Maybe Queen Wasp would have left them some trees to live in between the hives, so what made them fight instead of accepting that? Had their queen really thought their tribe had any chance of winning? Lou studied the blocky green shape that was meant to be the Queen of the Leafwings. It was so hard to imagine being Queen Sequoia, leading an entire tribe into a doomed war. He didn't even like arguing with other dragons. If someone offered Blue peace and stability and all he had to give up was a little independence, he would say yes in a heartbeat. I hope I get to see it one day, Luna said, licking honey off her claws. What? Said, startled out of his reverie. She pointed at the mosaic at the central yellow and black striped figure holding a rectangular shape over her head, the only object in the mosaic made entirely of gold tiles, so it caught the sun like a fragment of fire. The Book of Clearsight, Luna said softly. Don't you ever wonder what it says? What the next big disaster will be, or what's going to happen to all of us next? Of course, Blue said, but nobody gets to read it except the Queen and the librarian. I could see it, though, Luna said. From a distance, if I get to visit the temple one day. Well, Wasp Hive's not that far away, Blue said. It'll be easy to visit the Temple of Clearsight once you have wings. If you're assigned a job with travel permissions and time off, he thought, but didn't say out loud. Luna had enough to worry about. He stole a glance at her wrists, which she kept rubbing and then resting in the cool grass. Would the quiet lavender scales on his arms glow like that in 6 days? Was metamorphosis really more painful than anyone had warned them? He'd expected his wings to hurt a little as they came in, but he hadn't even thought to worry about his silk. They heard the chatter of approaching dragonettes. Enough voices that it was probably a field trip from one of the fancy Hivewing schools. Blue scooped up the empty Sugar Dream box, and they retreated to a less crowded section of the garden, where they played hide and seek until the sun reached its highest point and began to slant back down to the sky. They ate lunch at Luna's favorite cafe and then wandered through the Lady Cicada Art Gallery on one of the lower floors of the hive. Blue found all the different portraits of Lady Cicada a little intense, but Luna liked the tapestry rooms. Weavings were the one kind of art that was left entirely to silk wings. A Hivewing could probably buy dyed silk threads from one of the market stalls in a loom, like the ones Silkwing Dragonettes used for practice, but none of them would bother with learning to make low Silkwing art, which Blue thought was a bit silly. They certainly didn't mind buying the results and hanging them all over their walls. He left Luna gazing at her favorite tapestry, the one where Lady Cicada was flying with a long trail of radiant silk wings behind her in the sky, while he checked out the sculpture rooms. Lady Cicada was old enough to have been alive while there were still trees to spare, so there was one small wooden carving of her in the middle of the clay and metal and marble statues. The wood was a shade of brown close to her actual red color, and Blue liked to look at it and wonder about the artist. What did woodcarvers do when there were no more trees to carve? Did they still get to make art, or did they have to learn all new techniques? Or did the queen give them new jobs? Did they ever wish all the trees weren't gone? "Let's get to the cocoon," Luna said, appearing behind him. Her pale green scales looked white in the dim light of the gallery, and it was hard to see the gold flecks along her back and tail. Her wing buds were definitely more unfurled than they had been this morning, though, and her wrists were glowing as brightly as the lamps. "We have a little more time," Blue said, seized by a sudden panic. "We could get another honey drop, or—" "No," Luna said. Her expression was strange, as though she was already drifting into the metamorphosis trance. "I think I need to get to the cocoon as quick as we can." "All right," Blue said. Should he have made her see a doctor after all? But someone at the cocoon would know what to do if there were anything wrong, surely. They hurried to the outer spiral and down, down, level after level, getting darker as they descended in strange silence. For Luna, Blue couldn't remember a time when she'd stopped talking for this long. Blue wasn't sure if he was just imagining that the hum seemed louder down here, as if the insects outside were closer to the hive, busily swarming around it. The cocoon wasn't on quite the lowest ground floor level of the hive, but it was close to it. Here the streets were dimmer and emptier, the lamps fewer and farther between. A few lower-class hivewings lived down here in the small cells near the outer spiral. There was one hulking building that Blue thought might have been a training center for guards. The courtyard around it was open for a few levels up to give them space to fly their exercises. Blue glanced up as they went by, watching the dragons moving around the streets above them. Occasionally, a flutter of black and red wings broke the quiet as Hivewing flew from one end of the hive to the other to save walking time. But the main thing on this level was the cocoon, a long oval dome, 2 levels tall, which was swathed in so many beautiful weavings it almost seemed to be made out of silk itself. Every silkwing in Cicada Hive came here for his or her metamorphosis, and according to tradition, after each one made a silk weaving for the dome as an offering of thanks. Some of the weavings, especially the older ones, were simple, shimmery silver-gray silk in the shape of cobwebs or sunbursts or clouds. Other dragons had used dyes to add brilliant colors. Here a silver dragon spangled with emerald green wings and matching green eyes all around her. Here a swarm of tiny orange butterflies. Someone had even been able to afford 2 colors, weaving a midnight black shape of a hive behind an iridescent blue web. There were no trees, of course. It was forbidden to include them in art ever since the leaf wings had been driven out. Even the hive shape was dangerously close to that of a tree, and Blue wondered if the weaver had been worried about that. But for the first time, maybe because anxiety was sharpening his attention, Blue noticed something on one of the tapestries that looked like a leaf. No, wait, was that a teardrop? A single autumn red shape, somewhere between a leaf and a teardrop, and no bigger than his claw tip, gleamed in the middle of the butterfly swarm. Was he seeing that right? Why spend the money on a second dye color and only use it in such a small way? Wait, there was another one. He blinked, startled. This one was slightly darker red, hidden behind the black backdrop of the hive weaving. His eyes scanned the dome. There was another, veiled among a spray of escaping diamonds from a waterfall. Blue wrinkled his snout, puzzled. Now that he was looking, there were little red leaf drops hidden in half the weavings he could see. Why had so many silkwings decided to include that shape in that color? If it meant something, why didn't he know about it? Thank you for the hydrate. I've been starting to need it a little bit. Blue realized that Luna was staring up at the dome weaving too, opening and closing her talons nervously. He thought about asking her if she'd noticed the hidden red shapes, but it wasn't worth it to start a conversation that might stress her out. What she needed was distraction and calming down. What's your weaving going to look like? He asked. Have you decided? She'd been talking about nothing else for weeks, so Blue had heard all her ideas, but he was mostly trying to get her to smile, or blink, or do anything to reassure him that his bubbly sister was still in there. Luna winced. I don't know, she said. I have to get through this first. You'll be fine, Blue said, taking her front talons in his. Never heard of anything going wrong during a metamorphosis. I'm sure what you're feeling is totally normal. All this is normal. It's gonna be alright. Everything is always alright in the end. You know, you're gonna wake up with awesome wings and cool silk and fly everywhere and be the greatest spinner in the history of the hives. Luna closed her eyes and whispered, everything is always alright, as though he'd just said the sun is always shining, or the bees would absolutely love for you to take all their honey instead. Blue was relieved to see a cluster of dragons gathered near the low-arched entrance of the cocoon. Maybe one of them could get through to Luna. Look how popular you are, he joked, but his smile faded as they got closer, and he realized that most of the gathered dragons were Hivewing guards. Why are there so many guards? He was sure that normally there were only two. He remembered the two extremely bored-looking guards who had fallen asleep by the exit during Stormtail's metamorphosis, while he and Luna called encouraging words to their friend. But today there were at least 5 outside, and they all looked anything but bored. Black and yellow and red scales shifted and caught the dim lamplight as the Hivewings scowled and stamped their feet. 2 of them carried weapons, but the other 3 looked menacing enough without them. Mostly they had venom in their claws or shot poisonous darts from their tails or something along those lines. Blue shot a worried look at Luna. First silver spot, and Luna's weird glowing scales. Now all these guards. What does everyone know that we don't? Blue had to keep Luna calm. Whatever was going on, he didn't want her to go into metamorphosis feeling scared or anxious. Why are there so many guards today? Luna whispered to Blue. Weren't there only 2 at Swordtail's metamorphosis? Oh, I don't remember, he said brightly. I'm sure there was always this many and we just never noticed them. She said doubtfully. Luna! Swordtail cried, emerging from the group and bounding towards them. His scales were dark blue, with a small pattern of white triangles along his spine and snout, and then dappled all over with orange splotches, as though someone had melted a sunset in a cauldron and flung it at his wings. Blue always thought of his friend as one of the shiny silkwings around. Bright and gleaming, the way Swordtail had been when they first met on the school racetrack 5 years ago. But lately, Swordtail was always covered in dirt, with splinters of tree stuff caught between his claws, entangled in his long, elegant horns. And all too often he wore this expression, this worried, grim look that was really the last thing Luna needed today. Happy Metamorphosis Day, Blue said to him, perhaps a little too loud. He widened his eyes significantly at Swordtail. Isn't this exciting? I'm fine. I'm fine. Maybe a short break. But I like this book. I want to keep reading. Are you all right? Swordtail asked, gathering Luna into his wings. She leaned into him as though she'd been flying for days, and he was the island she'd been searching for. He took one of her front talons in his, and soft gray silk spun out from his wrist, gently wrapping around hers to wind them together. I can't believe you're here, Luna said. I thought Grasshopper would never let you come. Swordtail made a face. He didn't. I finished all my work and asked, yes, very politely, Blue, I promise, and he still said no. He shrugged. So I snuck off when he wasn't looking. Blue's idea of politely tended to be quite different from Swordtail's, but Blue had met Swordtail's boss once and was not at all surprised that Grasshopper had tried to keep Swordtail from attending Luna's metamorphosis. Silverspot's mistress would do it out of spite. Grasshopper would most likely said no because he was still trying to teach Swordtail obedience and good behavior. If Swordtail would quit picking fights with Hive Wings and expressing unpopular opinions all over the place, Blue thought, perhaps figures of authority would be a little less annoyed with him, and his life would be a little easier. Oh, Swordtail, he said ruefully, you're going to be in so much trouble. Doesn't matter. This is more important. Swordtail turned Luna's palms up and frowned at the glowing embers under her scales. Whoa. Does it look weird to you? Luna said anxiously. Of course not. Blue said, you're totally fine. I remember a little bit of light where my silk came in, but not this bright, Swordtail said, completely trampling over Blue's efforts to calm Luna down. I'm not sure this is normal. Have you ever seen anything like this before? He turned to his sister as she came up to join them. Directly behind her was Blue's mother, Burnet, who stepped around the others to give Blue and Luna quick hugs. No, Io said, sounding even more alarmed than he did. Her wings had come in several months ago, huge and dark purple with shimmers of aquamarine green. Ooh. She was only a year older than them, but she had long, aristocratic-looking bones and horns, and she towered over Luna. You don't think... They both glanced at Burnet for some reason, but she wouldn't meet their eyes. Oh, she said carelessly, I've been to so many of these, and there's always something surprising. Never anything serious, though. Nothing to worry about. Blue had never heard his mother lie, and his own stretched everything is fine here voice made him feel as if his nice normal world was as thin as paper and just as easy to stab holes in. Are you Luna? Said one of the Hive-Wing guards. One of the Hive-Wing guards said roughly, slithering up to them. He muscled Swordtail aside, breaking the slender threads that bound him and Luna together. You're late. Time to get inside. Sorry, Luna said, which was what she was supposed to say, and yet so unlike Luna to actually say that Blue shivered. The ground felt unsteady below him. Also, they were not late, not even by a heartbeat. All Hive-Wings and Silkwings had a precise internal clock that always kept their days on schedule and warned them when the rainy season was coming. Blues told him they were right on time. But of course, he wasn't about to argue with the guard. I love you, Luna, Swordtail said fiercely. We do too, said Burnet, and Blue nodded, though his sister wasn't looking at them and didn't seem to hear them either. You lot, up on the balcony, if you must stay, the guard said, waving one of his crimson and black dappled wings at the side entrance. He gave Luna a small shove in the direction of the archway, and she went, with only one last nervous glance back at them before she disappeared inside. Should we do something? Io asked Swordtail. Tell someone? There's no time, he said, his long blue antennae unfurled, twitching, and he turned to stride towards the dome. And it's probably not. I mean, it's so rare. What? Blue asked. Tell someone what? What are you so worried about? Io, what's so rare? Io looked as though she might be about to tell him, but nothing, Burnett said, putting one wing over Blue's shoulders. Don't worry, sweetheart. Let's go cheer for Luna. He let his mother steer him through the side entrance and up the stairs, their footsteps muffled on the ancient silver silk carpets. The gallery was a long, open balcony that ran around the entire dome, overlooking the dim, quiet floor below. The only light came from small candles floating in the central pool of water. Blue started towards the usual spot, on the far side of the dome, but Burnett gently tugged him back. Let's stand here this time, she said, choosing a spot not far from the stairs. Swordtail and Io joined them, the faint glow of candlelight rippling along their iridescent scales. Swordtail rested his front talons on the thick stone railing so he could lean over the edge, as though trying to get as close to Luna as he could. Blue couldn't do that until he had wings. It wasn't far to fall, but it would still hurt if he did. All around them, Silkwings were gathered in the shadows of the balcony, friends and family to the 3 other dragonets undergoing metamorphosis today. Blue recognized many of their faces, lit from below like eerie moons around the dome. Most of them were whispering to one another, but a hush fell as Luna was escorted out onto the floor. Like the others, her wristband had been cut off by the guards. Now in the twilight room next to the other dragons, and with her scales more visible, it was terrifyingly clear that something different was happening to Luna. Where the others had a pale, silvery light coming from their wrists, Luna seemed to have fireflies on fire, startling spots of molten gold. Blue felt Io grab Swordtail's arm, but he couldn't look away from his sister, all alone on the cocoon floor. I'm the one who was with her all day. I should have noticed that something was wrong. I should have made her ask someone for help. One Silkwing, a star-looking turquoise dragonette from their class at school, had already entered her metamorphosis trance. 2 long, seamless strands of moon-colored silk spiraled out of her wrists. Her eyes were closed and her talons moved automatically, weaving the silk into a cocoon around her. As Luna glanced around nervously, a second dragonet drifted into his trance and lifted his talons, silk threads spinning out. His cocoon looked like the first dragonet's, like every Silkwing's. It would shelter him for 5 days and nights while his wings came in. Swordtail had promised Blue that he wouldn't remember a thing about the trance time, but Blue found that almost scarier. The idea that he'd be unconscious to the world for that long, and then he'd come out looking totally different. Not totally different, Swordtail insisted. I still look like me, don't I? Which he sort of did, except that the wings made him look quite a bit bigger and more dramatic. The third dragonet was eyeing Luna's wrists with concern and making small, sidling steps away from her. Whispers were gusting through the watching Silkwings like the sweeping winds that shook their webs before the storms of the raining season. There were even more guards now, at least 7 of them, most standing unsettlingly close to Luna and pretending not to watch her, while their eyes darted constantly from her to the balcony, to the pool, to the others, and back to her. Luna held out her front talons, and the whole world seemed to hold its breath for a moment. Then suddenly she let out a sharp cry, and silk began to spiral out of her wrists. But it wasn't normal gray silk. Luna's silk flared like threads of lava erupting from under her scales. It hissed as it hit the air, lighting up the room with a sudden bright star brilliance. It was like the fire of the sun, twisted into filaments that snaked back to clutch at Luna's talons, her legs, her whole body. Oh no, Io whispered. She looked at Swordtail, whose face was transfixed with horror. Flame silk. What's flame silk? Blue asked frantically as the guards advanced toward his sister. He shook Swordtail with trembling talons. What's happening? What's wrong with Luna? The third dragonet below bolted for the far side of the dome and tried to scramble up one of the sidewalls, away from the guards and the burning light. Luna shrieked with fear and leapt away from the fiery silk spilling out of her, but there was nowhere to go. It clung to her like a real cocoon would, winding around her talons and legs even as she tried to claw it away. Is it burning her? Blue cried. He turned to Io, his voice high and desperate. Io, is she all right? What is flame silk? It won't hurt her, his mother said, but her voice was sad and soft as the splash of a silk-wrapped corpse slipping into the bay. Did you know? Io asked Burnett fiercely over Blue's head. Silverspot and I suspected, Burnett answered. Their father didn't say anything, and you couldn't tell by looking at him, but he was watched so carefully and taken away so quickly, we knew there had to be something. You could have warned us, Io hissed. We could have hidden her. Burnett shook her head. Luna let out another fainter cry, collapsing forward with her eyes closed. The flame silk spun on, and everywhere where it touched her, she fell still, as though it was tranquilizing her. Hi, Burango. Welcome in. Hello, hello. Everybody, please remain calm, one of the Hivewings said smoothly, spreading his wings to address the horrified audience of Silkwings. We are well prepared for Silkwing diseases like this. Everything is under control. Diseases? Blue echoed in a choked whisper. Io scowled. His sister wouldn't be left to transform quietly on the floor of the cocoon, like the two other small silken bundles beside her. Already she was surrounded by all the guards. Spears lifted, swords and claws and tail spikes all pointed at her, as though her flame silk cocoon might sprout fiery wings and try to escape. And a small metal cart was rattling through the door, yawning mouth ready to swallow her up. Luna! Swordtail shouted, taken out of his horror by the sight of the cart. He vaulted over the balcony railing and plummeted to the floor below, with barely enough time to spread his wings to break his fall. His legs were already moving as he landed, galloping across the floor towards the guards. What can we do? Blue asked Io and Burnett. Should they all jump down and try to save Luna? But there were so many guards, and maybe they were trying to help her. They did say they were prepared, so they'd seen this before. Maybe they would take her somewhere to cure her? Maybe they could fix her silk and make it normal. You run, Io said. She dragged Blue away from the railing and shoved him at the stairs. Me? Blue said, astonished. He can't escape. Burnett argued tiredly, following Io. There's nowhere he can go. It would be safer for him to turn himself in. No way! Io cried. We can't just let them take him. Why would they take me? Blue yelped in alarm. His talons scrabbled on the stone floor as Io pushed him forward again. I didn't do anything. I'm not sick. Neither is Luna, Io pointed out. She herded him along in front of her, talking fast as they tumbled down the steps. Flame silk is something you hatch with. She must have inherited it from your father, which means you have it too, which means they'll come from you next. But why? He said. One of his claws snagged painfully on the carpet. He paused to unhook it, looked back up the stairs, and saw his mother watching him go, with a bleak expression. Watching, but not following. She'd already given up. What are they going to do with Luna? We don't know, Io said. We've never been able to find out. Flame silks are very rare, and the Hivewings make them vanish immediately. Vanish? Blue echoed. Like, forever? His insides felt as if they'd all leaped off the top of the hive and were currently plummeting towards the distant ground. You see why you have to run? Io pushed open the door at the bottom of the stairs and looked out. All clear. Quick, while they're busy with Luna and Swordtail. Blue dug in with his claws as she tried to throw him out the door. Wait, run where? He pleaded. Anywhere, she said. Run, hide, and don't let them find you. But I'll get in trouble, he said. I can't hide from the Hivewings. Mother's right. If they want me, I should turn myself in. They won't hurt me. His voice wavered, thinking of flame silks vanishing forever, disappeared so thoroughly that he'd never even heard of them. Maybe we can fix me, so I won't have flame silk. Io groaned softly. Why did it have to be you? She said. The one Silkwing who thinks Hivewings have any good in them? Listen, Blue, stop trusting them. Right now. They've let you go about your ordinary life so far, but now you look dangerous to them, and they're not going to let you have that life back. It's gone. But it doesn't have to be, Blue protested. If I'm good, if I do what I'm told, I'm not dangerous. I would never be dangerous. I know, Io said, rubbing the spot on her forehead between her horns. Unfortunately, I think that's true. Took his shoulders and shook him. But they don't care. Please promise me you'll hide from them, Blue. Don't let them catch you. For how long? Blue said. Where can I go? What about my metamorphosis? It's really soon, and then I'll have to come back here. Io sighed. Let's hide you first, and then figure that out. Sounds so sad. Yeah. It's not great. She shoved open the door, flung him outside, and bolted after him. Blue found himself running, even though his brain was shouting at him to go back, to ask the guards for help, to make sure Luna was all right. Was she still terrified, or had the silk entranced her, taking her into peaceful darkness, even as chaos swarmed outside her cocoon? What had the guards done to Swordtail? He could never fight so many. Silkwing didn't stand a chance against even one Hivewing. Was he lying beside Luna on the sand now, bleeding and swollen with venom? Blue shuddered, his claws wobbling underneath him. They had just reached the edge of the outer courtyard when he heard shouts behind them. "Stop! You there! Silkwings! Stop at once!" His feet obeyed instinctively. Guards were talking to him. Guards were to be listened to. You never argued with Hivewing guards, or else you'd get sprayed or stabbed with something. Everyone knew that. But Io didn't stop. Io threw her talons around his chest and hurled up into the air, her spectacular wings pumping desperately. Io! Blue yelped with fear as his claws left the ground. Suddenly they were flying along narrow streets, flashes of startled faces peering out of windows at them. The indigo whirl of Io's wings beat around Blue's head, and he covered his eyes. "Stop! Queen Wasp orders you to stop at once!" Where did Io think they were going? There was nowhere in the hives where Queen Wasp couldn't find them. Nobody ran from the Queen's guards, and she would surely kill them both for disobeying her orders. Eel let a small roar of frustration, and Blue peeked through his claws. They were nearly at the exit that led to the tunnel spiraling up, but guards were closing rank in front of it, spears crossed, teeth gleaming. That's the only exit, Blue thought frantically. There weren't even any windows or ledges to the open sky on this level of the hive. Oh, he realized, with a fresh burst of terror. That's probably intentional. So there's no way for a flame silk to escape. Io whirled in the air and shot down one of the avenues towards the training center, which frankly seemed like a poorly thought-out plan. Blue could see a small army of eager-looking Hivewing trainees swarming out of the front gate. Yellow-striped wings flicked and buzzed. Sharp white teeth snapped at the air as the dragons spread out to search the streets. For us. They're searching for us. But then Io Bank suddenly left and up through the open courtyards towards the higher hive levels. Blue yelped again as the ground dropped even further away, and then really wished he hadn't even thought the word dropped. Shouts of fury rose from below, followed by the sound of buzzing, beating wings as all the guards and soldiers took to the air. We're going to die, Blue thought. There's so many of them, and they have... Wait, why aren't they shooting at us? He knew some of the Hivewings behind them had dart weapons and spears, so why hadn't they thrown them? Dragons on the surrounding levels rushed to the edge of the ledges to watch the chase. Blue had never had this many eyes on him before. What do they see? What do they think? Does anyone want to help? Or are they all hoping we'll be caught, and it'll be exciting to watch? Suddenly, Io was jerked backward, and Blue felt himself slip through her talons for just a moment until she dug her claws in. Ouch! And gave a mighty heave of her wings, kicking backward at the Hivewing who'd grabbed her tail. They struggled in the air, Blue dangling between them, and then Io swept her wings in a huge arc and threw Blue up towards the highest open level. Blue screamed. He flung out his claws and felt them catch in the rough tree-stuffed walls. His body slammed to the side with a bone-jarring thump, and he dug in his back talons desperately. "Up!" Io shouted to him as she swung her attacker like a club, smashing other Hivewings away. "Climb, Blue, go!" He tried to imagine he was out on the webs, having a perfectly normal climb with lots and lots of secure webs below to catch him. He pushed himself up again, and in a moment he felt the ledge above. He clutched at it, his wing buds churning as though they could help. Two faces peered down at him, Silkwings, ones he didn't know, but he could guess what they were thinking. Should we help this wingless dragonet? Will the Hivewings punish us if we do? What has he done to make the guards chase him? He must be a very bad dragon to be running from the guards, but if we let him fall, he'll die. Talons reached down and circled his wrist. Strong arms pulled him up to safety. He sprawled on the tree stuff, gasping more from fear than exhaustion. This was a residential level, full of high-wing homes a bit smaller than the one where Silverspot worked, and he landed in their school's practice vegetable garden. All around him were garden boxes full of dirt and little tendrils of maybe one day I'll be a plant, labeled with optimistic scrawls on flat wooden sticks. The two Silkwings, watching them with confusion, were the only dragons nearby, but he could see Highwings running toward him along the streets and others spreading out their wings on the far side of the city. "Io," he panted, scrambling up. Are you all right?" asked the gray-blue Silkwing with speckles of yellow across her scales. "What's the other?" began the other, but he broke off as Io landed on the ledge behind Blue. "The seeds will grow again," Io said to them. She shoved Blue forward without waiting for a response, but he saw a look of recognition cross their faces. "What?" he said to her as they plunged down the nearest empty street. He glanced back and saw the Silkwing casually blocking the road behind him. Their wings spread wide as they started arguing about something. "There are Silkwings who will help you," Io said rapidly, "if you can find them. A group called the Chrysalis." The houses they ran past were narrow but elegant, made of tree stuff that flowed straight into the street below and into the roof above them, as though they had grown with the hive. Most of them had intricate patterns of seashells or glass tiles embedded in their outer walls, spirals of pearl pink coral or zigzagging diamonds of aquamarine. Street lamps that hung from the ceiling above cast a warm glow over everything, deceptively calm and cozy, like a shroud of silk around a wasp's nest. "The Chrysalis, why don't I know about them?" Blue asked, breathing hard. He'd never run this much for this long in his life. Thank you for the hydrate. His sides ached and his talons hurt and his eyes were blurry and his heart felt like a bee's hive about to explode. Io snorted. Because every time someone says to you, "Hey, wasn't that mean what that Hivewing did?" you say, "Oh, maybe she's tired or frustrated with work or just lost something important or is having a fight with her sister." And it's kind of hard to follow up with, "Well, so care to join a movement to take her down?" Thank you for the head pats. "A movement?" Blue sputtered. "To take who down?" The street abruptly ended, spilling them out into a Hivewing park, or at least it looked a bit like a park, but without any grass or flowers. Instead of the vast circle was full of playground structures carved from real wood, dark and smooth like the abandoned bones of ancient trees. Many of them arched all the way to the roof, which was probably a lot of fun if you were a dragonet with wings and a chance of surviving a fall from that height. A Hivewing school, shinier and much bigger than Silkworm Hall, loomed along one side of the park, and in the middle of the circle was a pool of water lined with silver-bright mirror tiles. On the far side of the park, Blue caught a glimpse of slanting sunset light through one of the openings where dragons could fly in and out of the hive. Out that window were savanna and open skies. But how could they get there? The park was full of Hivewings, dragonets playing, parents gathering water from the pool, guards and families and teachers who'd finished school for the day, all strolling the paths, filling the space between there and escape. He'd wondered why the houses they ran past seemed to be empty. Apparently this park was the place where the entire neighborhood gathered at the end of the day. "Duck your head," Io said. "Pretend to be a servant. Walk quickly but not too fast." She folded her wings in close and darted out onto one of the more crowded pathways, weaving between dragons. With her head bowed submissively, she blended in with the other Silkwing servants Blue could see here and there, many of them carrying heavy water jugs or keeping an eye on young dragonets, while Hivewing parents chatted with each other. "This is never going to work," Blue thought, as he ducked his head and followed her. And yet for a moment it seemed as if it might. The Silkwings barely glanced at two more lowly Silkwings. They were so busy with one another. It was as though the Silkwings didn't exist. Many of them were watching a group of young dragonets leap from a climbing structure, their tiny wings pumping to help them drift down. One little black and orange dragonet crashed into Blue, and she ran across to her friends, but she just yelped, "Oops, sorry," and kept going. It looked like a nice place to live, perhaps not as huge and impressive as the higher level where Silverspot's mistress had her mansion, but a place where families were friends with one another. These dragons made one another laugh, worked hard, cared about their dragonettes. They were happy to be safe. They weren't so different from Blue and his family. Surely they wouldn't let him be dragged away by guards to whatever happened to Flame Silks? Did they even know about Flame Silks? Behind him, he heard clanking and running Talon steps. He tried to duck his head even further, following Io around a tall, fort-like playhouse where 3 high-winged dragonets passed pretend honey out the windows. The open air wasn't too far away now. In a moment, Io could swoop him off into the grassland. Hivewings didn't like going out too far into the savannah, so they could be able to find somewhere to hide out there, and then Io could explain everything to him, and they could figure out a safe way to make this right. They were standing behind a cluster of tiny dragonets in a sandbox when the silence fell. It fell so suddenly, like a wall of nothingness, that Blue found himself pausing to touch his ears in bewilderment. Why did everyone stop talking? He glanced around uneasily. They hadn't just stopped talking. Every hivewing in sight was frozen, right in the middle of what they'd been doing. The dragonet halfway up the climbing structure had one claw raised. The twins in the sandbox were scowling at each other, mouths open, but no sound coming out. Io slowed to a stop in front of him, spreading her wings slightly to keep him back. Her gaze nervously darted around at the silent dragons. Blue realized that the other Silkwings in the park were looking around too, many of them just as bewildered. And then the Hivewings lifted their heads, all of them at once, and tilted their chins towards the east. Blue felt a scream building in his throat. All of their eyes had gone pure white. Find the Flame Silk Dragonet, the Hivewings said in unison. Capture him, and bring him to me. A shriek of terror ripped through the heavy air, but it wasn't coming from Blue. It came from near the pool, from a young Silkwing with a pale blue and pink wings, holding a baby Hivewing in his arms. The tiny dragonet glared up at him with its fathomless eyes. Hive mind. Yep, exactly. Aphid, the Silkwing cried. What's wrong with you? Aphid, can you hear me? Aphid bared small teeth and twisted his body fiercely, struggling to get free. Let him go, an older Silkwing said softly, touching the younger one's shoulder. They're not themselves right now. The dragonet snapped at his caretaker's talons as the Silkwing set him gently on the ground. Where is the Flame Silk? Aphid said, in spine-chilling unison with the other flame wings. The other hive wings. Who can see him? The hive wings all slowly, eerily began swiveling their heads, staring in turn at each Silkwing in their line of sight, like snakes studying a herd for the weakest prey. Io? Blue whispered as softly as he could. I think... Run, she whispered back. They bolted for the exit, Blue's wings screaming and Blue's legs screaming in protest. Every head snapped towards them. A black-spotted scarlet dragonet, no smaller than Blue's wing buds, threw herself off a slide at them. Hissing, she landed on Io's back and sank in her claws, but Io dove into a roll and kicked her off. Blue felt pinpricks of pain stab into his ankle. He glanced back as he ran and found an orange dragonet with his teeth embedded in Blue's back leg, too small to do much damage, but hanging on grimly. How do I shake him off without hurting him? Blue thought frantically. There was no more time to think. Too much larger hivewings blocked their path. Wings spread and claws gleaming. Give up, wingless, they said. You cannot escape me. Blue skidded to a stop, and the dragonet tumbled off his ankle. There were hivewings in every direction, all focused on him. The voice was right. There was no arrow. Io barreled into the 2 dragons in front of him. Her wings flapped huge and purple in their faces, driving them back for a moment, clearing a path, and there was sky. Blue darted through the opening and ran pell-mell towards the ledge. It was close now. He could see 2 of the 3 moons rising. He could see small twisted trees and a distant giraffe and long yellow grass waving far below. too far below. He reached the edge and froze. The wall of the hive plunged down before him, impossibly steep, impossibly terrifying. This level was far below the webs, but still a long way from the ground. Blue couldn't possibly jump from here. He would break his neck and die. If only I had my wings. He turned and saw Io fighting off 3 full-grown hive wings. Their talons slashed at her side, and one had his tail raised to stab her with a stinger at the end. Io! Blue cried. Go, Blue! Get out of here! I can't! He felt tears finally start to flood his eyes. I can't go without you! In a way, he meant, I can't fly from here, I need your wings. But in another deeper way, he really meant that he couldn't leave her at the mercy of these zombie dragons. He couldn't keep running alone, knowing she would be caught and punished worse if he did escape. You have to, she shouted, but she must have realized he couldn't take that leap. As he took an indecisive step back towards her, she kicked a hivewing in the face and broke free for a moment, just long enough to grab a twisted ladder structure and knock it over between her and her attackers. And the breath that gave her, she shot a twist of silk from her wrist up at the ceiling and another that coiled around Blue's ankle. In a heartbeat later, he was hurled towards the roof. His claws caught the webs that Io was shooting across the top of the cavern. Instinctively, he clung to the next one, and then the next. He jumped swiftly like they'd learned to do in school during emergency drills. What if the web was falling? What if you have to get to a hive quickly for safety? What if you only have a few strands of silk to escape along? But those drills had been about the threat of leaf wings attacking the webs. They were practiced so that little wingless dragonets could be ready to flee to a place where hive wings could protect them. Never once, despite his overactive imagination, had Blue ever imagined using these skills to run away from hive wings. He shot over the heads of the families on the playground. Spider dragon, spider dragon, spider dragon. He shot over the heads of the families on the playground so fast they lost track of him for a moment. As they whipped their heads around, buzzing and hissing, he reached the end of Io's silk, shielded by a tall slide near the walls of the school, and looked back. Io was almost at the edge, and with hive wings distracted looking for him, she might be able to get out and fly away. But not with him. She'd only be able to escape without him. He gouged a trunk of tree stuff out of the ceiling above him and threw it as far and hard as he could. It landed with a clattering thud halfway across the playground, and all the hive wings spun towards the sound. Blue let go of Io's silk and dropped to the top of the school wall, then over it and down into the small courtyard beyond. Triangles of lime-colored chalk marked out the games young hive-wings played here during recess. For a moment, Blue thought about grabbing one of the pale blue practice spears that leaned against the wall, but the truth was that he'd be more likely to hurt himself than anyone else with one of those, and he couldn't even begin to imagine stabbing another dragon on purpose. Where do I go? He glanced around the courtyard, trying to catch his breath. It was surrounded on all sides by the school, except for the wall behind him, which had the neighborhood park and a horde of white-eyed zombie dragons to the other side. They'll follow the trail of yellow silk and figure out where I went in a moment. Even if I can get out of the school somehow, where would I go after that? I can't go back to Mother. I'm sure Swordtail will be on Miss Behavior's way by morning, if he's still alive. I have no idea what they've done with Luna. He pressed his talons to his mouth. He didn't have time to cry. He didn't have time to be sucked into imagining how Luna and Swordtail and Burnett and Io must be feeling right now. He started across the courtyard towards one of the school doors, although this time of day he was afraid they'd all be locked. Psst! Over here! Blue whirled around. A small equipment shed was built along the side of one of the school walls. The door was open a crack, and a pair of golden yellow talons was reaching out of it, beckoning to him. He could hear the high-winged voices issuing commands on the other side of the wall. There wasn't time to be worried and indecisive. He bolted towards the shed and let the strange talons yank him inside. The door snicked shut behind him, leaving him in pitch darkness. Blue tripped over a ball under his claws, and the other dragon caught him, strong arms holding him up. He felt the brush of wings against his side. This was a Silkwing who had recently gone through metamorphosis, had already gone through metamorphosis then, but it must have been recently. This dragon was smaller than he was. Who? He whispered. Shh, she said. She wrapped her front talons softly around his snout. The shed was small and packed with paraphernalia. There was barely room for Blue and the other dragon to stand. His claws felt clumsily entangled with hers. His neck kept bumping up against cool scales, and her tail lightly rested over his, but she was so perfectly still that he couldn't pull away, or at least he feared that if he did, he might knock over a wall of armor or something. He wondered if she could hear his heart slamming around his chest. Did she work at the school, cleaning Hive-Wing classrooms, preparing their snacks? Had she ever seen the Hive-Wings act like this before, as though their minds had all melded into one? Did she know what was happening, and how dangerous it was to protect him? I'm gonna keep going till I reach the end of the chapter, because it's like a page and a half away. Don't move, she whispered, apple-scented breath in his ear. She let go of his face, and in the dark he felt her crouched beside him, reaching for the inner wall. Her wings were like a cloud of butterflies against his scales, touching down and taking off in 1,000 little brushes. Maybe she was scared, too, or had she rescued other silkwings like this before? He tried to imagine being that brave. Brave enough to see a dragon in trouble and an entire tribe turn terrifying, and still reach out to help. How's your throat holding up? I'm pretty good. Maybe if he imagined it hard enough, he could make himself a little braver too. She took one of his front talons and touched it to the wall, or rather to a spot where the wall disappeared, an opening, a trapdoor into a tunnel. Stay close to me, she whispered. The tunnels can be confusing. Are you with Chrysalis? He whispered back, his nose bumping hers as he turned toward her. She touched his mouth again, a hush gesture, before ducking into the tunnel. He followed as close as he dared, trying not to step on her tail. It was like crawling through an ant farm, following the tunnels in a winding maze through the walls of the school. Here and there, chinks of light shone through the cracks, and Blue caught glimpses of the buttercup yellow scales of the dragon in the dark. Through the cracks he could also see fragments of the school, even rows of tables, a blackboard covered in neat columns of numbers, an easel divided into two narrow lines of blue and black paint. At last she stopped and peeked through a small hole just at eye level. After a moment she unlatched a trapdoor, pushed it open, and climbed out, beckoning for him to follow. He had to duck his head as he came through, since the trapdoor opened out of the wall under a long table. Blue's eyes were dazzled for a moment as he crawled out, although the room they were in was not particularly bright, had no outer windows, and was lit only by a few lamps. The first thing he saw as his eyes adjusted were the books. Shelves and shelves of books, reaching floor to ceiling all around the room. He stretched his aching legs and turned in a slow, wondering circle, thinking of the students who were lucky enough to attend a school with so many books. Had anyone read all of them? Did the librarian love handing them out, or did she wish she could keep all of them safely within the circle of her wings? This is our library, said his rescuer, hopping up onto the table and curling her tail around her back claws. I know, it's pretty small, but it's closed most of the time. We share a librarian with a bigger school up level, so it's a good place to hide when the rest of the tribe goes all creepy eyes. Blue turned slowly towards her, his heart thumping like mad. Her claws were small and sharp, like a leopard's, and her forewings swooped down from her back in a beautiful smooth fold. She had an open, curious face, gold-rimmed spectacles, and warm, dark brown eyes that made him think of owls and tree hollows. In the glow of the lamplight, her scales were gold and tangerine, but speckled here and there with black scales that looked like tiny ink blots. Black scales. The unmistakable sign of a dragon descended from Clearsight. Silkwings never had black scales. His rescuer was a Hive-Wing. And that's where we're going to end. I had fun with that. That was good. But I'm like so badly tempted to just keep reading. Though I might keep reading and just like have this dog-eared and like and come back to it next week. Not actually dog-eared. Because my mom would kill me. I do have a bookmark though. Thank you for the hydrate. Only went 4 minutes over. Let me go get my bookmark. Got a cute bookmark. It's canvas cloth, and it's embroidered. It's pretty. It's a bit thick for a bookmark, but I think it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. I might put it on the outer edge of the book so it doesn't mess up the pages too bad. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you for reading us a story. No problem. Always love to be here to do things. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out the whole time. I hope that my occasional fumble wasn't too bad. I feel like we should raid into something similarly cozy if I can find something. Maybe an art stream. You read well? Thank you. I really appreciate that. Let's look for an art stream. And then I get to go and work on art myself. Huzzah. Maybe Stardew Valley also. Like, there's a couple options for cozy. There's really not a lot of art streamers going on right now. It's kind of surprising. Usually there's a good amount. Might be out of luck. Alright, then I'll just raid somebody I already know. But doing stuff, that's true. That's true. I'll raid somebody I know. We can raid Nimikoi. I like them. I mean, there's Fiune, who is doing model art, but they're muted. So, but that's not bad. They're really cute and pink. You can do them. They just started, like they've been live for a minute. I've never rated them before, so. Actually, I think they're just. I don't know. I'll do Nimikoi just because I know they're actually doing stuff. Yuna is just kind of sitting there, but actually they're probably drawing, so I bet it's I get it actually. They're drawing. For a second I thought they were idling because their eyes are closed, but when you're looking down at a tablet, your eyes look closed. So they're probably looking down at the tablet while drawing or something. Alright. Seven. I'm actually surprised that many people hang around just to hear me read a book. I'm very flattered. Alright, anybody who wants, you can grab the raid messages. There's the spinny raid message, which is for subs, and the sparkly raid message, which is for followers. And we're gonna go raid somebody who's doing art. They're muted. They're about to go on BRB. Oh well. It's already started. I'm not gonna stop now. Maybe they're just grabbing some water. Who knows? We know how that is. But I will see you all then. I appreciate you all hanging out with me. You have a lovely, cozy voice. Aw, thank you. I enjoyed reading the book. Bye bye, book. I grabbed that book in like a moment of like, I need something. So, I will definitely get a better book PNG for next time. Till then, I love you very, very much. Bye bye.